welcome back. I want to just start off by apologizing for not putting anything out the past 3 weeks. The weather and bugs have not been in our favor. The black flies have been terrible. We've had 2 days now where they've kind of left us alone, but if it's not the black flies, it's either a little too hot to work the horses, or it is pouring rain and mucky everywhere. But now, like I said, the black flies are leaving, and it has dried up a lot this past week, and so we'll be able to get back into work. And so today I was just going to give a little update, starting with Daisy and the foal. Ready? You gonna come over? So we have decided for now for a name, Dash or Dasher, whichever one, because he loves to dash around. That's how we decided to go with that name. It could change if something else comes up that we prefer, but for now we like the name Dash. It suits him. Obviously he's definitely grown since the last time we've shown him. He was a month old yesterday. You want to scratch? He likes scratches still. And Daisy is doing really well too. She's being a great mom, recovering very, very well. We've finally been able to let them out of their pen. The rest finally dried up, and so it's very cute. He likes to run around in there. He just does circles and circles. He does like 5 and then has to take a nap. It's funny. He got really big. He's really, really big. His mane is coming in really nicely too. And his color has changed already. He's kind of getting a brown black on the top. But the gray down here is still there. I really hope he turns out gray. It's so cool. He's so cute. So, well, now we'll just go to each horse, give a little update. We'll start with Mary. We have finally gotten her feet trimmed up. So they still need some work, but they look a lot better. Her training in the stocks is coming along very well, and she did really, really good for us. It was very cooperative. Right? Yeah. Her with everyone else, they'll probably be on a schedule where each horse is in the stocks once a week for hoof work, just so that it doesn't get ahead of us again and they don't end up looking bad or anything. So we want to keep them. Her fronts are pretty close. They still need some work. They were pretty bad, and you can't fix that in just one trim, so it's going to take a couple more to get them to where they're supposed to be. And once they're there, we want to keep them like that, so we'll get her in the stocks often so that they don't grow and get to where they were. I think so. We're going to be starting her training back up soon, or yeah, our dad is. I don't know. It'll be me or dad. I don't know how much training I want to do. I have figured out that training isn't necessarily for me right now. At least not the training that I did with Mary and Daisy last summer. The 1-hour session in the round pen, desensitizing, all of that. And I figured that out with the foal as well. I had a not too good training session with him a couple of weeks ago. I really lost my patience, and I think it's just because it's not for me. I don't have the patience for that kind of training. I prefer the training I did with Izzy and Sally the second winter we had them. I trained them to our commands in the harness, ground manners, all that. Or training Jenny and Mable to ride, that I enjoyed, but the training to work basically from scratch isn't something I'm very interested in. It could be something that I end up doing in the future, but right now it's just not something that I enjoy. We'll keep going. Hi everyone. So while editing this video, I realized that I didn't say as much as I wanted to about the training. So I said that I don't have any interest in training horses to work, but that wasn't necessarily true. I just didn't explain it very well. What I wanted to say is I don't want to help the horses that had something happen to them, and so now they have that in their mind, and I have to try and get rid of that and then also train them, because that's what's happening with Mary and Daisy. We're assuming something happened to them working in harness, and so now they have that, and who knows, it could have been a wreck, and so now every time they see a harness or our harness, they think they need to panic, and I don't want to put myself in danger. What is happening over there? So as I was saying, sorry about what just happened. I have a couple chickens out and our two puppies went and chased them, so I had to call them back. But anyway, as I was saying, I don't want to put myself in danger to train Mary and Daisy. I mentioned they probably went through something like a big wreck in working in harness, and now that is just stuck with them. And so there's a difference between training from scratch with, say, Dash, and then training, having to help horses that have went through something, help them erase that from their memory, sort of, although it might not fully ever leave, but teach them that it's okay and that that's not going to happen again. So I have to do that and also train them to work, and it's a lot more dangerous in this way. And I've already seen it with Mary, the time when I had her in a round pen just ground driving, and she would bolt for no reason. Nothing was going on, we were just walking in a round pen. And so all I see is when we try and put them on an implement, that's what's going to happen. And so I have no interest in putting myself in that kind of danger, which is why I said that Dad will probably be the one going back and training those two together. And they'd probably most likely be his team once they're trained. I might work with them if I get to a point where I know they're not going to bolt. Then maybe, but if not, I have the other 6 to work with, even though Izzy doesn't work anymore and Jenny's half retired. I still have the boys, Sally and Mable, to work with and all that. Dash, I will also keep training. I haven't had a training session with him since our bad one a couple weeks ago, and that's only because I know if I go back in there with him, I could feel it whenever in the morning when I'm like, should I go in? I feel it. I'm like, no, I'm going to get angry. I can feel it, so I just say no. And that's okay. There's no rush with him. He's a month old. And even that, so a lot of people don't start halter training until they're weaned off from mom or a year old or something like that. And you know, people take in wild horses and train them, and so we're already ahead of that with him. We can already go in, pet him. He loves to come and see us. He loves the attention. So there's no rush. We already know that once it's time to get in there with the halter again, he'll come up and he'll let us put it on and all that. So, and he can't work until he's 3 or 4 anyway, so there is no rush. But Mary and Daisy are entering their prime physical, mental years, and so Dad especially would like to see them working definitely this year. So I'll definitely film and show any of the training he does with them so that you guys can watch their progress. And I will help him if he needs it and all of that, but I will not be the one doing the main training. I'll just be the helper. I think that's all I wanted. I think I explained that better today, and we'll keep going with this video. So, here's Izzy. You can probably tell on the camera she is underweight. That can happen coming out of winter. It could have just been a rough winter, and she's an older mare. Sometimes it's harder to keep weight on older horses. But we've been able to get them out on grass, and they'll be out into the main pastures soon once we get the fencing done. But just with the little bit she's had, she definitely does not look worse. Some days she looks pretty good, other days it's a little bit less and we can see her ribs, but I'm pretty sure once she's out on pasture she'll put the weight on before winter, and she'll have a nice layer of fat going into the winter to keep her warm. But other than that, she's doing good. She's moving around fine. She's still Izzy. She has her Izzy personality. Now we just have to focus on getting some weight back on her. Sally. She is a little bit underweight. Not anywhere near as bad as Izzy, but there's just sometimes certain angles we can see her ribs, and you don't want to be able to see the horse's ribs. It's, if I'm not mistaken, you want to be able to feel them but not see them, and so every once in a while we can see them, which means she's a little bit underweight. But her as well, once they're on the fresh grass, she looks great, and so she should have no problem putting on some weight before winter. She's still working. We're watching because we don't want her to lose weight, but she's also built a lot of muscle throughout the winter and the spring, and we don't want her to lose any of that. We want her to keep building it. I don't know if you guys saw the community post I put out. It would have been a few days ago, or maybe by the time you guys are seeing this, a week ago. I posted a side shot of her, and she looked fantastic. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell me she was 20 years old, and she is, so she looks great. Just a little bit, like I said, underweight, but should have no problem putting it back on before winter. Then Mable. Mable actually still has a tiny bit of her hay belly, but she's had that since we got her. Mabel's kind of she looks at food and gains weight. So she is currently off. She's a little bit lame on this front right leg. The horses have been in a little bit of a rough pasture. Plus, we just gave her a pretty good trimming, and so both of those combined, she may have just stepped or slipped somewhere and injured herself a little bit. She was limping a bit. Today she actually seemed pretty fine, but she'll still get some more time off just to make sure. This has happened before. It happened in the fall when there was a bit of a change in diet from pretty much full-time grass back to hay, and this front right leg hoof is a little more sensitive than the rest, we've noticed. And so, like I said, she could have just slipped somewhere, stumbled, twisted something down there, but she's healing fine and should be back to work maybe by the end of this week. Other than that, she's doing really good. Jenny is also doing great. Her too, a little bit underweight, but that's fine. Like I said, it can happen coming out of winter. Winter was a little bit rough, but that's it. She, as you may already know, has arthritis in her front right shoulder, and she's been a little bit, she is already stiff when she walks on it. You can tell she walks a little bit funny, but there's been a little bit more of a limp for a couple days, and so her as well, like Mable, she could have just slipped somewhere, stepped funny, and just moved something in there that is causing a bit of discomfort. But again, she looked almost back to normal today. So a few more days off, and again, like Mable, probably by the end of the week she'll be able to come back into her working schedule. And Jenny, like I said, is a little bit underweight. We want to put a little bit more fat on her before winter, but we also don't want her to be like a big fat balloon, because we don't want to put extra weight on her front shoulder here and legs just because of the arthritis. We don't want to put more weight on there to make it more uncomfortable. And she hasn't been one to be a big fat balloon either. She kind of, once she gets to where she's supposed to be, she kind of just stays there, which is perfect. Not unlike Mable. If Mable goes too long with no exercise, she becomes a balloon. So, yeah. Now, Riley, I don't know if you guys can tell, we've been working on everybody's feet. I think we've been doing a pretty good job. Him and Charlie had a pretty hard workout a week or two ago, and we've noticed they've been just a little bit sore because of that. They're not lame, they're not limping or anything like that. You can't tell when they're not working, but yesterday I took both out. I put Riley with Sally, and I asked them to go into a trot, and there was a clear sign he was uncomfortable. Something was bothering him in the front. His back, he seems fine, but something in either his shoulder, something is just sore or uncomfortable. So he's going to be getting some time off along with Charlie, because Charlie is the same. Again, when they're just walking around in the pasture, we can't really tell, they look fine. It's more when we start going at a quicker pace, and I'll have to put them back to work in a few days to know if there's still something wrong, because again, we can't tell when they're just walking around in the pasture. But other than that, Riley's doing good. He's building great muscle and looks great. He could probably put on a little bit more weight, but that won't be a problem once they're on the fresh pasture. And Charlie, so like I said, as well, like Riley, when he's moving at a quicker pace, he's a little bit uncomfortable in the front. We also just gave him a trim. His training is going great in the stocks. We've been able to get all 4 feet up and trim, and so now, like everyone, he'll be going in once a week for a rasping, a little bit of knife work, a nip, something. And so part of his problem could be that we did a pretty good trim, and so now it feels different, and he could have stepped somewhere and something has shifted, moved, and so he's just a little bit uncomfortable. So him as well will be getting some time off, and in a few days maybe I'll hook the boys together, hook them with one of the girls if Mabel's okay, and just take them for a little walk, see how they're doing. And I see this as an opportunity for me to do some bonding with them. I'm talking about the 2 boys here. With our first winter and second winter, wait, no, sorry, I didn't say that right. The first winter, it was just Izzy and Sally, and we didn't really work with them very much. We did a bit of ground driving and all that, but it was mostly just bonding, brushing, taking them on walks, just spending time with them. And then we got Jenny and Mable, so it was just the 4 old girls, and it was pretty much the same. We worked with them more once those 2 girls came, but we still spent a lot of time just brushing, taking them on walks, spending time with them, bonding. And Mary and Daisy, we didn't do very much of that because we spent a lot of time brushing and training because they needed the training to learn how to lead and stuff. But we didn't get to do much walking around because, again, they were scared of almost everything. So taking them on walks wasn't really easy because it was just spinning, bolting, and that kind of stuff. But we got to spend a lot of time brushing, and the training is bonding time too. But I like just spending time with the horse, no working. Like I said, walks, brushing, and just being with them. And so with the boys, I didn't really get a chance to do that. We got them, and then we gave them a month to just settle in. We brushed them through that time, took them for a few little walks. But then after that, they've kind of been working since then, so I haven't spent much time just bonding. So I'm going to take this opportunity that they're a little uncomfortable to work right now to just spend time with them and bond. Take them on walks in places that maybe I haven't before, lead graze with them, brush them, and just hang out with them, just to build and increase and make a stronger bond. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to. And so we kind of have one other thing that's been lame. Our poor tractor lost its front right tire. They were already pretty weak, and it was just a matter of time that it just popped. This has kind of been good though. It's been over a month for sure, maybe even a little more than that the tractor has been out of commission. And Dad has left this like this on purpose so that we are forced to use the horses to do more things around the farm, which is why we have them. We have them so that they can help us do chores around here, so that we don't have to use machinery. We have the machinery as a backup, and I'm sure Dad will get it fixed eventually, but he wants to push it as far as he can so that we know that the horses can do everything we want them to do around here, and we don't have to use the machines. But I wanted to show you all my plants that will be going in my gardens this year. So here, I'll start over here. So here I have my tomatoes and peppers. Some of these guys, doesn't matter how many little sticks I put with them, they just won't stand up. Nope. Okay. And so all of these will be going into my 2 front gardens that we will be bringing a single horse in to get all the grass out and turn up the soil, but it will not be a horse garden. That will be the only reason I have a horse in there. And then after that, we'll be putting quite a few boulders around the gardens to make the barrier, and the horses won't be going back in there. But I do have a plan to have a horse garden as well over there in a bigger space for things like potatoes, beets, carrots. I have a few watermelons started. I don't know how well they'll do with the transitioning. This tray didn't do good at all with the going from in the house to outside. And my cantaloupes didn't do very good either. But we'll see. Maybe these watermelons will push through and I'll get some this year. Then I have a few, these are just the smaller peppers and tomatoes. They'll be potted up into bigger pots a little bit later, or they'll just go straight into the garden like this. And so I have quite a few because I'd like to try canning for the first time this year. I've never done it and I'm really interested in it and I want to try it. I also hope that I actually get some peppers this year. I've always gotten tomatoes, I've always done good here, but peppers, I've gotten some, just not a lot, and they're not always ready. But I think this year will be the year I get some because some of these peppers, like this one, they're already the size of peppers I've put in the garden, and I still have a couple more weeks. So I think that I started my plants early enough this year that I'm gonna get a good crop. I think that's it for this. So I don't know how much we've talked about our berry or apple trees. I am standing with one of our cherry trees. I don't know which kind of cherry is it again? We don't know. I don't know exactly which kind it is. We planted this, which year? So we planted this 12 years ago. I think we've gotten like 3 cherries from it. You can see there's a whole bunch of flowers, but the birds always get them before we do. So maybe this year we'll put some kind of netting over it so that we can actually get a cherry. We also have one right over here. It's a little bit smaller. The flowers, there's plenty of flowers on that one too though. And over here we have our biggest apple tree. 10 years ago. So this one was planted 10 years ago. We're right by the house. So I'll come closer because of the wind. So this tree doesn't have very many flowers this year, and it does that. It'll go 1 or 2 years with 3 with apples. So it'll go about 2 to 3 years with more apples than we know what to do with. There's just so many. And then it'll take a year off and we'll get, like there's maybe 5 flowers on here, so we'll get maybe a couple apples. But like last year, it was full and there was a whole bunch of apples on the ground here. Yeah, we didn't know what to do with all of them. And well, we have a few rhubarb. Couldn't remember the name there. This is one of my front gardens. My brother weed whacked it for me so that we can get rid of all the rocks and then get a horse in here to just turn everything up. We also have an apple tree in that garden. And my other garden is right over here. Also has an apple tree. We didn't weed whack that one. All of that grass being turned into the soil is perfectly fine. It's good for it. So hopefully Mable and Riley will be back to work very soon, and we'll be able to get one of them into these 2 gardens. Get it ready for planting. Along our road over here, we also would have a blue spruce. Are they all apples or is it? Then, so it's a blue spruce, a pear, an apple, another blue spruce, an apple, and then a pear. Just a nice line of trees along the road. So this here is our berry orchard of 200 shrubs. And I'm gonna take the camera from my dad and he'll explain what we have in here, how we have it all, and how we have it all set up.
Okay everyone, so yeah, as Alexa said, there's 200 shrubs out here, a variety of different fruits. We're at this one side, you'll see a lot of dandelions. We do a little bit of mowing at this time of year, but we try to keep the dandelions around. It's the primary food source for things like the bees and the butterflies. And you know, if Alexa goes in and maybe she can show you a little bit of that, but any of the spots of dandelions are just full of bees right now.
I love bees. Bees are so awesome.
And so, as you can see, there are some up in the cherry that we just showed you as well. But besides that, there are no other flowering plants around, so we think it's very important to do that, considering the vast majority of our shrubs in here are all at the point where their flowers are going to start to open fairly soon. The ones that are ready anyway. So we planted this a couple of years ago. Cherries take a little bit longer, but eventually, 5 or 6 years, they're all going to be as tall as me. We've got 20 of those here. Now this is a hardy sour cherry, and when I say sour, they're still quite delicious to eat, but nothing compared to what you might get in the grocery store. And they do much better freezing and using in jams and pies and stuff like that. But they're doing very, very well. And I apologize, I really can't off the top of my head remember the varieties that are in there, but perhaps we'll throw that in the description. The next little bunch, it might be hard to discern what's there, but I'll get Alexa to go over to our row of elderberry. And so these are a bit taller. On either side of the elderberry, I left no mow zones. And there's a number of other sort of flowering weeds and plants that are in there as well. And I will leave that until all flowers are closed off of the actual shrubs. And then we keep the orchard a little bit better maintained. There's going to be a lot of wood chips coming in this year and that kind of thing. The next two rows after that, we've got Haskaps, or honeyberries. And so again, there are several different varieties in here. The one Alexa's at happens to be a tundra. This is a very hardy berry that's kind of like a cross between a blueberry and a raspberry, both in sort of look and taste and everything. They have these funny sort of long shaped fruits that are about an inch long, that are shaped almost like a tube. Absolutely delicious. It's our favorite berry at this point, the whole family that is. And we're anxious. We're going to get a good harvest this year, it looks like, and because we've been buying a lot of them from some other local producers. But anyways, great stuff. After the two rows of Haskaps, we're into a row of black and red currants, and these do very well here. The reds are a little shorter than the blacks. They just take a bit longer to establish, but this is a prolific plant, and we expect to see a whole bunch of them. Right down the middle after this is a plant called a gooseberry, and so it's kind of like a mix between a grape and, I don't know, a grape and something else. It's a little tougher than a grape and a little more sour than a grape, but absolutely delicious. And for the rest of the orchard, we basically mirror what we went through before the gooseberries. So a couple rows of Haskaps, a row of currants again, the elderberry, and 2 rows of cherries towards the pond. You may be able to see just off past the orchard. It's kind of hard right now, and we've shown before, but there's a lot of young apple, pear, and plum trees out there. There's about 30 in the front of us, and we've also got them scattered out across and over on the other side of the pond. In total, there's about 40 fruit trees, 200 shrubs, mostly apple in the trees, but again, I just mentioned we've got 4 plums and about a half a dozen pears out of the 40 or so total trees. So I guess I'd say 30 apple trees and 10 others. And now that we've had a few years, we've seen what establishes very well here, what produces here. The plan is likely to expand this significantly, sort of 4 or 5 times, doing other beds like this. We may focus more on just cherries and Haskaps, but and then do sort of the same thing with the apples. Install other sort of plots where there's 25 to 30 trees at various spots around the farm, and see what happens. Long-term stuff for as much as I'll get to enjoy it, it'll be mostly for Alexa later on. And yeah, I think that's been a fun journey with these fruit trees. It was the first thing we put in the ground the first summer we were here. It was an apple tree, and it's still here. It's the one Alexa showed you, but oddly enough, that one that she showed you that we're only going to get a few things off is in its second place. It started on the other side of the house, almost died, so we moved it to this side, and it's been our apple tree for a decade now. And the nice thing is, I'll just say, when you see how much is on the cherry, and even though cherries are typically a tree fruit, It's really a shrub in our case, so it's a cherry shrub. Our apple trees, plum trees, whatever, when they have a really good season, lots of flowers, lots of fruit, the shrubs tend not to, and vice versa. And so this year so far, even though this shrub orchard is still establishing itself, we've been able to see an enormous amount of flowers. It was nothing like that last year, whereas our apple trees all did very well. That said, when you have 30 apple trees, even at a young stage, even if they only have a few little apples each, we're still going to have a lot of apples this year. Not necessarily more than we know what to do with. I've been around most of the trees. There's flowers on all of them, so we will have some apples. And that was always the intention, that even during the worst seasons, we should still have a little bit to eat fresh for us anyways. And in the really good seasons, even the horses won't be able to keep up with what's there. Never mind the berries, so we're expecting to be able to potentially sell some stuff just with what we already have when things are in full production in a few years. But certainly any expansion will be beyond our own needs and looking to supply our local community and perhaps beyond with some of these wonderful things that we're growing here. Some folks, when they hear about our orchards, ask where are the blueberries, where are the raspberries, where are the strawberries. So we will be putting in some strawberries for ourselves. We have very good friends, fellow farmers, not too far from here that have a major strawberry operation. So it's not something we would pursue commercially. The same thing goes for raspberries. They're very commonly grown. There are several operations around here that do that. And where we are in the northern part of Ontario, wild blueberries are pervasive here. There's quite an industry built around it in a couple of the cities that are within reach of us. So it's not something we intend to pursue. We may plant some cultivated varieties of blueberries because it's very different than the wild variety. We happen to prefer wild, but under both circumstances, we have no intention to commercialize that. What we've chosen to put in here are, first is our taste factor that we happen to enjoy, and second is the health benefits. So these are all super nutritional powerhouses, and especially the Haskap, and we'll put a link in the description to some info on that particular berry because most people have never heard of it, including people that live around us here where it's currently being commercialized. There's also some stuff happening in Western Canada, in our prairie provinces, and we have a unique challenge, of course, in Canada with our harsh winters, and our fruiting plants need to be able to survive those. So there's been a lot of research at some of the universities out there, and it's really fantastic stuff that's happening. Yeah, that's about it.
So that'll bring us to the end of today's video. I'll try my best to get one out on Saturday. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.